All right. Next up is our strategic programming director, who many of you have seen through our previous online fireside chats in 2020 and 2021 and 2022. And thank you so much for all of your patience. Alexander Leotopoulos, please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to introduce the panelists for the first panel. We have Dr. Kelly Downing, who is the CEO and Executive Director of Sound Businessing. We have Ms. Stacey Varghese, who's the Director of Leadership Annual Giving and Engagement and founder of the Professional Development Webinar Series at St. John's University, and Dr. George Kourlas, who's the Adjunct Professor of Radiopharmaceutical Chemistry at Memorial University and Nuclear Pharmacist at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. If you guys could join me up here so we could commence our first panel. Well, we thank you for being with us today. The first question that I have for you is, as mentors and educators in your respective disciplines, is it important for students and young professionals to specialize in niche industries, or does the interdisciplinary approach really provide more valuable, well-rounded, and impactful development in a person's overall personal and professional development? We'll start with you, Stacey.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So that's an interesting question. I think to properly answer that question, I'm going to say both are necessary, and I'll explain why. So I think having a niche is strong, where you have an understanding very specifically of a specific subject matter. However, I think with COVID, I think you see a lot of change where people who are in one industry and knew that that was the industry they're going to be in have now been switching because of work-life balance, or they're finding an understanding of how whatever it is that they were doing may not make them happy and is not fulfilling them in other ways. So with that said, I think having a broad understanding of a subject, like for example, to be specific, a general practitioner. So a general doctor, it's good to know everything, but with that, if you have a specialty, I think you're covering both worlds, and then there's more in the future for you.
Thank you. Dr. Kelly?
Good morning. I would agree. My area of expertise deals with adolescence and urban education. So historically, there's always been a need to prepare students for the future. But I think, as was mentioned, with the pandemic, that has shifted our the urgency with which we need to then just promote that same mission. So my organization, for example, Sound Business Inc., we are responsible for providing both education and performing arts programming for students, and we offer a variety of programs to cover all of those bases. So for example, we have two specific programs that are really industry related, workforce development related. One being our auto tech program, which we have been fortunate enough to partner with Ford Motors. And if you've been, just listening in the news and just being, a citizen day to day, we can see how the electronic or the automotive industry is changing. Electronic vehicles will be here to stay, and those new developments are opening new doors that haven't existed before. And so Ford, for example, is recognizing that demand to replenish its workforce, which is why they have invested so much time in young people and making sure that they have that ability to bridge that gap. Another program that we have is our theater tech program. Again, very specific in terms of training students for industry-related careers in theatrical production, so forth and so on. And then to be broad-based and be flexible at the other end of the spectrum is important, because we don't know what the future is really going to hold specifically. So to train students, particularly to develop skills such as communication skills, interpersonal skills, skills that will be transferable to careers and industries that have yet to open up as a result of this advancement in technology. So
I like that you said that about the transferable skills, because right now I'm in the job market, and I think the most important thing that I've learned in applying to jobs is, as long as you have transferable skills, it makes you a better candidate.
yes.
George, would you like to add anything?
Yes. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Basically, coming from a specialty, more specifically nuclear pharmacy, there's pros and cons. It can be a double-edged sword where Again, healthcare is never stagnant. There's always change, there's always development, there's always new drugs, new technology, new discoveries. So you, along with your field, are always developing at the same time. However, it can be spoken about, hey, something could change down the road where something may not be fulfilling anymore, and I need a change. Thankfully, with a, let's say, in my case, a degree in pharmacy, I can go into chemotherapy pharmacy. I could go into clinical pharmacy. I could go into regulation if need be. So again, you can run into the danger of specializing yourself into a corner, where again you kind of become a one-trick pony. However, again, with healthcare, everything is changing. So, and also you can kind of go into a subspecialty where, again, currently I am doing a general nuclear pharmacy practice, but I can also go into nuclear radiopharmaceutical manufacturing, working in a CMO. For the uninitiated, CMO means for a certified manufacturing organization. I could also go into the regulatory field where I could work with the FDA. So there are, you still can develop within a specialty. However, again, I am in agreement with everyone else here that it is a good idea to become first a general practitioner, and if need be, you could always go into a specialty if so desired.
Thank you. So leading into the next question, there's obviously some level of disconnect between the academic pursuits and the manifestation of our professional goals. Otherwise, nonprofits like ours, Fuel for Thought, wouldn't be needed. How can educational organizations aim to do more to bridge the gap and better direct students towards the critical resources that they need in their formative years in college and after graduation? We'll start with Kelly.
I think, I guess, making sure that issues that are related to this don't get pushed to the back burner. I think one of the main things that I'm coming up against with is just making sure that that we don't let the voices or the people that are marginalized or that are disenfranchised be silenced, that there's always going to be someone to champion those causes. And to take up the torch for those issues. I think it's important to just have that sense of urgency. I think, there are so many issues that require attention and support that we need designated people to continue to keep the ones that we know need that to be promoted alive and at the forefront of these conversations and discussions. My community and my organization is based in Harlem. And over the past few years, we've seen like a lot of historic institutions, a lot of cultural institutions have been closed. And with that closure, there is a lack of that bridge that connects the present with the past, which I think is very, very important. Otherwise, you have a distorted sense of self, community, and what the future actually entails. So keeping that, those aspects in the conversation and just keeping that torch alive is very key.
I agree. Stacey?
So I think this is a fabulous question, and I'll tell you why. Right now, I have a daughter who's a sophomore in high school, and we're currently looking for colleges for her. So this high school has about 350 students. There's 2 guidance counselors. It's a great high school. It's one of the top tier, public, but top tier. And she's just a number to them. So even though they are looking at all their kids, it's beneficial for them to have their kids go to the top colleges. They don't have the resources to be able to really understand each child individually. So me personally, we were looking at private college counselors, but these private college counselors, my goodness, $10,000 to $12,000. But here I am sitting as a mother, and I said, she put her hard work in. We invested our resources. We moved to this town to give her the best. And is this one thing going to affect where she goes to college? So now we're in a situation where we're thinking it's $12,000 for this counselor, but when senior year comes, even though her grades are great, she's active, am I going to lose out on that opportunity for my daughter to get into a reputable college because she was just a number? with that said, right now, I obviously work for St. John's University. I raise money for the school. The same thing goes for the students at St. John's. We do have a career center, which is great, but how many students can they really personally handle? If they worked with a organization like Feel for Thought,
Mhm.
where there would be that extra, and again, like you said, if they were able to recognize, okay, this is one individual that has come to me numerous times. We don't seem to be able to give this person personal guidance. Maybe we can recommend Feel for Thought.
Right.
And I think there are other organizations out there where these larger communities need to sort of invest in and really understand, and then that will be success for the greater good for each person.
I agree. I would also say that so many of these organizations exist and some people don't even take advantage of them. Because I was working in the career center at St. John's over the past 2 years, and they have so many resources. And I went to another school for undergrad, and we didn't have the resources that we're fortunate to have at St. John's, and so many people don't take advantage. So it's like a knowledge thing, but then it's also you need to go out and take advantage of them. George?
Yes, I think that educational programs, college programs should already have mentorship already built in, because you don't want to have any students that are just lost souls and are just kind of going through the motions. Where I was lucky when I was going through my program, where as a freshman, I was mentored by a more senior student. And when I finally got into pharmacy school, I was also mentored by my professors there. And as I was going through my internships and going to the hospitals and clinics and ambulatory care, from there, I was mentored by the preceptor right there. So already in healthcare, there is already an aspect already built into mentorship. And also, I think it should also be emphasized, not only in healthcare, but in every single program in college, that, hey, mentorship is part of the program. Because again, it's very easy to lose sight where, again, professors are just, trying to teach the course and get through it. Students are just trying to get through the next exam. They're trying to get through the next project, through the next paper, and they just kind of lose sight. And then when they graduate, they, have the quote unquote quarter life crisis, cue the scary music. So there has to be guidance from day one, where no student is just going to be left in the lurch and has to fend on their own, because that's not fair to the student, and also that's not fair to the field in which they're interested in, and also just society in large, where sorry, you're on your own, kid. That's not fair to anyone.
So that kind of leads into my next question. What resources do you think local mentoring initiatives could get from regional community leaders and other administrators to be able to improve the education and mentoring initiatives that they started? What did I phrase that wrong? What support do mentoring initiatives need from local and regional community leaders and administrators to improve educational and mentoring experiences? What do you hope students and young professionals will gain from their mentoring experiences? Let's start with Stacey.
So I think the best way to answer that is bridging the gap. It's just a matter of going out there, speaking to the city professionals, like anybody who is in leadership. I know for myself, I do for St. John's alumni, I host webinars every week. And these webinars are really for professional development. I reach out to any industry leaders and I just ask them, like, listen, are you able to speak for St. John's? Just to kind of, explain to whoever joins just what is the trending topic right now and answers about it. So with that, I actually did reach out to the community in Queens and saying, listen, this is something we do for our St. John's alumni, but at the same time, it's for anybody. It's free. Anybody can come and join. And it's these services that these panelists are giving. So I think it's just really getting out there, meeting people. If you don't ask, you're not going to get it. And you need to make these conversations happen, show them that you're willing to give your time, you're willing to do what is necessary. I mean, honestly, Chris is a perfect example for that. Mm-hmm. Chris is the one who sought me out. She saw that I was doing a webinar. The person who was actually a panelist was not a St. John's alum, but again, I look for industry leaders, and she's the one who reached out to me and said, you have an alum, right, or a St. John's alum and professor right here who does the same thing you're looking for. And that's exactly what it is. If she didn't reach out to me, I wouldn't have even thought. And now we have this, great relationship. So I think it's just reaching out, you have to ask.
Mhm. I agree. George?
Yes, I would have to say that it's all about basically, again, bridging the gap and also 360 feedback where, again, you have these community leaders saying to colleges, professors, whomever, hey, I'm looking to kind of match mentors with potential mentees. What do you think about it? What do you have to offer? And then from there, just kind of put the word out and just get the word and just kind of, get your brand out. But almost in a similar fashion where, again, Chris reached out to me saying, hey, you're in healthcare. How about you come and do this? And lo and behold, here we are. So again, there also has to be a little bit of, I guess, again, in terms of 360 feedback, asking the students, hey, how was your mentor experience? How was that going? What worked? What didn't work? What kind of changes would you need? So again, there is some responsibility on the mentee, also on the student as well. And again, if you don't ask, you don't get. So again, to the students out there, don't just, sit there and think that you don't have any say in this. Yes, you do. So again, it's your profession. It's basically your life. Again, try and get as much experience and information as you can out of your mentor and also the program writ large.
Thank you. Kelly?
So I think in terms of support, one would be obviously funds and helping to help organizations that are doing good work. In line with what was said, I also think networking is important between organizations that are doing the work. There are a lot of grassroots organizations that don't get the attention because, either they're not, connected or they're not even seen, they're not on the landscape. And that's unfortunate. I've been in situations where looking for funding, sometimes you're asked to compromise who you are, compromise what it is that you stand for in order to be able to get the funds. That's an issue. Another issue is sustainability. I don't want to secure funds for my organization only to have it maybe for 2 years. And then after I've done this job of scaling up based on those funds, then I'm left scrambling to try to keep the program that I built together. So I think, again, raising awareness as to what it really takes to do this work. It's not easy. And a lot of the decisions that are made, unfortunately, come from those that are removed from the day-to-day aspects of what it really takes. I want to also start a conversation about philanthropic pursuits and how organizations are funded. I think there needs to be another conversation about that. It's big elephant in the room. A lot of organizations just accept it, that this is just the way that it is. You have to fill out ridiculous amounts of paperwork. I'm not trying to remove the necessary or the need for transparency. I believe that if you're going to donate money, you need to have, accountability. But I do think there are a lot of barriers that prevent smaller organizations that are doing exceptional work from being able to do it on a scale that is important. And then one of the other parts of the question was, what do we hope mentees get out of this? I think is a few things, just at the core, the ability to develop their critical consciousness. I want them to be able to not only see themselves and to see the world in which they live in, to be able to make informed choices, to be able to pick up that torch and to question things that are commonplace, to be able to recognize what issues are going to be not just present now, but ones that are happening, that will happen in the future. And how will we be able to have those on the front line advocating for those that need it most?
Thank you. That kind of leads into the next question. So you've given a lot of advice to mentees. In the spirit of our passing the torch Promethean fire theme for today, what is some advice that you've gotten from mentees that you as a mentor have taken into consideration and it's helped you personally? We'll start with you, George.
Sure. I guess more specifically, putting on my adjunct professor hat, it's my responsibility to make sure that the student understands the topic that I'm speaking about. So again, pressure's on. I do appreciate when I do get constructive criticism from my students at the end of the year, and they take that into consideration when I go into the next year when I'm going to go and conduct my class again. So are they visual learners? Do they prefer, hard copies over a computer or other way around? Do I put everything online? Do I give them handouts? So I kind of have to experiment when I'm going to teach my students. So also, am I speaking clearly? Am I speaking too quickly? And I'll even tell my students, hey guys, am I speaking too quickly? They'll be like, yes, professor, yes, you are. Okay, I'll slow it down. So I'll bring it down a notch. And again, I'm thankful for them because again, it is immediate feedback right then and there. And again, that makes me better and also prepares me for the next term when I'm going to speak. And also, as a side note, I also precept students from my alma mater for about 5 weeks. And again, I try to make it as engaging as possible, where again, you're not just there to, just sit in a corner and just watch me work. I'm there and let's say, okay, compounding a specific radiopharmaceutical. Okay, come on down here. This is the way that we do it. This is, I don't know, lutetium-177. This is treatment for, this disease state, and this is how I make it. And we have to be very careful when we're dealing with radiopharmaceuticals. So I try to make it as engaging as possible where, yes, they are observing, but also, my heart sings when they start taking notes or even when they're recording me as going about my day, and that feels great too. So yeah, case in point, in a nutshell, when one teaches, two learn. So that's what I believe.
I like that. Stacey?
So when you are a mentor to someone, you see that as an opportunity to help guide this individual in whether it's a professional position or life matter, for them to better themselves. So with that investment, I believe there's no time limit. Even if they reach that initial goal that they are trying to reach, you develop a relationship. You are going to be this person's, you should be rather, this person's go-to forever, for life. And I think that's something that as a mentor, I mean, I personally take very seriously. Of course, there is a time period where you may be engaging more, but at the same time, they should always know that they can count on you. They can, if they're changing some career path or some life goal, like they should always feel like you are there. So I think that developing that relationship and sustaining that relationship, I think is key for success.
I think that's a very important piece of advice that we could take, and that I've been told many times in this phase of my life. Sustaining the relationships you make. You want to make a good first impression, but you want to make sure that you maintain that first impression and move forward with it. Kelly?
Just building on what was said, I think just having access to that is really key. Just making sure that your door is always open. With the mentoring program that we run, Mentoring Kings, I tell them that this is a mentorship for life, which kind of surprises them. Like, I don't think that's something that students hear all the time, so they really don't know what that means. I think it's also important to appreciate the fact that in mentorship, you learn just as much from your mentee as they probably learn from you, if not more. So just keeping that at the forefront, I think, is important. I know many times there are little things that I didn't even think mattered that students or mentees will come back and say to me like years later, like, oh wow, that stuck out. So you never know when you may be intentionally thinking that this is the one thing that you're going to hope makes the difference, and it may not be that. It may be them watching. I had a student the other day, based on the fact that a lot of their day-to-day contact, they're not around a lot of professionals, they don't see that. So a student commented on the way that I was dressed. Student commented on the way that I spoke and said, okay, wow, when I saw you come into class, I knew that you were somebody that I needed to align. So I wasn't even thinking about it. And so being that happened, it always makes me more cognizant of being present, looking for verbal cues, but also nonverbal cues. Sometimes students just, it may be a body language, but just being really open and attuned to those little things makes the difference. And I think those are the things that are important when we begin mentorship.
That segues perfectly into my next question. Do you recommend traditional approaches such as taking on internships, externships, different apprenticeships, or attending workshops like this one, or traveling down the road less traveled? So something more unique approach to building your professional and personal brands. I'll start with George.
Yes, I'm kind of old school in this regard, where I believe that, again, get your name out, and also, you have to have FaceTime with the people that you're interested in communicating with, and also building contacts with. So I'm more into attending professional development programs, also getting involved in your professional associations. So let's say, for example, in pharmacy, it's American Pharmacists Association. There is also American Health System Pharmacists. And more specifically for me, it's Society of Nuclear Medicine and Molecular Imaging. So basically, there is a little bit of an upfront cost for students where, again, they're going to have to foot the bill of transportation, and also there's an entrance fee, but it could be priceless, the information that you get, and also the networking that you could go and develop. So that's basically my take, is basically there is going to be an upfront cost, but it's going to help you out immensely. So get involved in the professional organizations that are within your field of expertise.
Stacey?
I am 100% for internships. I think internships, mentoring programs is the absolute key to success. Just like George said, networking is key. Me, myself personally, I was raised in Queens, so I have the hustle in me. And I remember when I was at St. John's University, that was the time during Monica Lewinsky and the White House scandal. And I would watch it on TV, and everybody was was so concentrated on this situation. All I was thinking was, how did she get in the White House? And you know what I did? I Googled, I saw whitehouse.gov, I saw the internship, I applied for it. I'll never forget that day that the large envelope came to my house. And I was an intern during the Bill Clinton administration. And that actually took me to so many different places. And that really was me just doing it on my own. But it was an internship. So it was a 6-month internship. It was an amazing experience of my life. And that really gave me different opportunities in my life. And I'm in some ways living the way I was hoping to live right now. And that was truly because of all the internships I did.
It's awesome. Kelly?
I would agree 100%. Internships are important. And then just also building on what was said in being explicit and teaching students about developing that social capital and understanding, stepping outside of your comfort zone. A lot of times in high school, a lot of cliques, everyone just feels comfortable, but letting them know like this, and it's important to step outside and be uncomfortable, or be comfortable, as one of my students said, be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Right? It's an example of me learning from that. But being explicit, a lot of students, again, particularly in an urban setting where I'm coming from, they are just going through the day-to-day, not understanding that this journey is the segue to a larger set of opportunities in life. And so I think being explicit and letting them know, yes, those traditional pathways are important, but you're near to resources closer than you think, even in your own peer group.
That's great. Thank you. So now we'll open up the floor for a quick Q&A. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask the panelists individually, or we'll leave it up to them, whoever feels more comfortable answering them. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. Yes.
So in regards to students who need that extra push, right? You talk about the programs available. I remember being that kid in high school. I was a lot different than I was now. I kind of didn't know where to go. Almost sometimes there's so many options that you almost feel like you have no options. So for a student that, or my college as well, the student that doesn't know how to take the next step, that needs that little push, what do you recommend for students that don't necessarily know how to take that next step?
So I'll start with that answer. So I think that's just being aware as who we are in our profession right now. If you see a student that, let's say, is looking at you with the eyes when you're in the classroom, or you see that student that may be emailing you or coming in, I would see that as a sign of somebody who is looking for success. Because you're right, it is hard. Like, there are a lot of students out there who they're just not outgoing. They're not, I don't want to say self-motivators, but they won't go that extra mile to see what opportunities are there. But I think where we are as professionals and where we are in our lives, we should really kind of pay attention to that. And just by the way they are, maybe approach them and say, hey, what are you trying to, what are you trying to do? What are your goals? And then if we are able to help, I definitely would say, okay, you know what, let's talk. Let's do something like that. Do you guys want to add?
Yeah, actually, this sounds a little bit more, woo-woo, but you almost have to ask the student, okay, what do you like? What motivates you? like you have to do a little bit of soul searching. Where, again, it kind of goes beyond that. And again, you could only go so far. You could plant the seed, but then they have to take it from there. And again, you kind of have to guide them a little way because they may not have the language to kind of explain what's going on. And again, as a teenager, all these emotions, they can't really suss anything out. You have to be there to guide them just to, make sense of their emotions or their motivations or what they want. So in that way, you really can't talk to them, rubber meets the road. It's a little bit more, out there just to kind of give them a little bit more guidance. And then hopefully you planted the seed. And even if they, do not want to pursue a career in like my field, at least they know what they don't want. Okay. Case in point, whenever a student rotates through me in my radio pharmacy, first thing I tell them is, you're going to be with me for 5 weeks. If you come out of my rotation saying, you know what, nuclear pharmacy is great, I want to pursue this, fantastic. If you come out of my rotation saying, you know what, I don't want to do this, that's fantastic too. You're one step closer to finding out what you want to do.
Just building on that, I'm just thinking of a few students that fall into that category. It's being aggressively relentless in extending that invitation. So if I see a kid and I can identify that he's kind of like out of the scope, kind of off on his own, he's constantly just extending that invitation and that opportunity and keeping the stakes very low. And sometimes it's just having them experience something and being in close proximity to it and knowing that you may not get them that first time, but there's another time, that may be, you might be more successful in getting them to kind of join. And you just never give up. I guess that's really what I'm trying to say. You just keep coming back until eventually, hopefully, that they'll be able to kind of join.
Thank you. Any other questions? In the back, sure.
I wonder if any of you have run into as mentors the issue of how fast tech is changing the industry and therefore our inability to provide good mentorship. I was in law school and I recently was mentoring someone about the steps to really pursue your education. The next semester we met with them, they had dropped out of college and were rushing in. And I thought, they're already antiquated. Am I now with this new environment?
We'll answer this one very quickly, and then we could talk more in the breakout sessions afterwards. So if you could all just, whoever feels comfortable. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's a really great question. That's a really great question. I think we still are grappling with it. I'm just, it has impacted education as a whole. And I think even with that new paradigm, there are a set of skill sets that we have to kind of learn, to your point, right? If you're from a certain generation, some of it isn't as new and familiar to you. So I think there's a learning curve there to see how we can embrace that, because it is important. So I think having, at least acknowledging that that is an avenue is the first step. But then there's still some work to be done to find out how do you prepare for those that want to enter that way, And so I think that's something that's still up for discussion. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to conclude the first panel. If anyone has any other questions, the speakers will be available to speak with you at the end of the second panel when we do the breakout sessions. But I want to thank you all for participating today, and we look forward to our next segment. I'm going to pass it over to Chris.